All right. So we do have a couple of housekeeping items that we need to go through first. So there is this continuing education disclaimer that just says basically we don't have any financial interest, we don't have any bias, we're not investigating any product or trying to sell any product. We don't accept any commercial support for this. And this has been designed in combination with the Oklahoma, obviously the Oklahoma Medical Reserve Corps and the OU College of Nursing. Okay, so for those of you wishing to get CE credit through the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, and that includes all of those categories there, please go to that link, and then you're going to type in the promo code that is listed there as well. Now, this information is also listed in your registration under your MRC page, so you can find it there as well. But if you are looking for CE credit for any of those categories, please go to that page. And if you go ahead and actually click on the page, it'll open it up, and that way you'll have it open for once we're done. And then you can go back and put that information in. If there are any nurses that are wishing to get CE credit, please just email me, and my email is listed there with the subject line Stress First Aid CE for Nurses. And when we are finished with the entire course, I will send you the information for how to get your certificate and all that kind of good stuff. There will be an evaluation that we will send all of you as well. And that will be coming, we'll just send it through the MRC website so that you can complete that once the series is finished. Okay, so like I said, this is number 2 of the 3 sessions that we will have. The last one will be on the 26th. So that's next Friday from 10 to 12, same time. And there will be 2 hours of CE for each session with a total of 6 for all 3 sessions.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully we have some new folks. My name is John Call, the unit coordinator for the stress response team. My background, I have a PhD in psychology, clinical psychology, board certified forensic psychologist. I'm also an attorney, and I am trained as a emergency medical technician. So this purpose of this program is to introduce you to a strategy designed to provide assistance enhancing emotional and behavioral health to peers, children, adults, and families during and in the aftermath of a disaster. And we certainly are experiencing disaster in our lives presently and for the foreseeable future. I'm going to have some announcements regarding our new YouTube presence. I'll be discussing that later. This workshop is being presented by SRT Inc., as well as the OU College of Nursing and the Oklahoma Medical Reserve Corps. SRT Inc. is the housing authority for the stress response team. As a forensic psychologist, I spent decades doing criminal behavior profiling. I was nominated by Governor Keating in 1995 to be on the board of directors of the Oklahoma State Department of Mental Health, the same month as the Oklahoma City bombing, and helped develop, design, and administrate America's first community mental health program post-terrorist event. I found out that you can profile disasters. So let's profile the pandemic that we're experiencing. It's a prolonged diffuse disaster as opposed to, let's compare it to a tornado, which is an acute localized disaster. So, for example, you can live in Edmond and there could be a tornado in Moore, and it really not impact you significantly. It's there, it happens, it's gone. You read about it in the news. If you're with the Medical Reserve Corps, you might deploy, but you go home at the end of the day. A month or so later, things are fairly back to normal, even for many of the people in Moore. It's not so for a pandemic. We've been involved in this prolonged diffuse disaster for almost a year, and we're going to be involved for a year or more in the future. And then you see, pandemics have no clear cut geographical or chronological boundary. It's everywhere, and we don't know when it's going to end. A pandemic impacts society and individuals in multiple foreseeable and unforeseeable ways. It precipitates further disasters and crises, both during and well as following its existence. It impacts negatively everyone, whether or not you become ill. So the pandemic is negatively impacting us economically, socially, physically, and emotionally. This slide I found in October of last fall, and it compares deaths from other deadly events in our history. Now, notice that last fall, October the 6th, 210,000 deaths from COVID. I saw on the news this morning before I came here, there's 493,000. It's more than doubled since October. And it's greater than U.S. deaths in World War II. Um, Presently, heart disease and cancer are the diseases which have a higher mortality rate than COVID-19, but COVID-19 apparently is number three. And it's going to get higher. Only the Civil War and the 1918-19 flu pandemic presently were more deadly than COVID-19. It's to be expected that a portion of those impacted by such prolonged diffuse disasters are experiencing, both citizens and governmental leaders will inappropriately use denial, magical thinking, and displaced aggression in a maladaptive attempt to deal with this heightened emotional distress. As one of my professors used to say, denial is not just a river in Egypt. And we see such reaction nationwide with the debate regarding the use of face masks, the debate about the worth of the scientific method. I've had people tell me, well, you shouldn't use a face mask. That's one of the, doing PPEs, one of the first things I learned to do as an emergency medical technician. Now, for those of you who attended the presentation part one, you'll see, will have already noted that I'm going over some of the same slides. And these beginning slides I am repeating for each part because we have some new attendees and they need to listen to the background basic information. So for those of you who have memorized the first part of my presentation, feel free to get up and make some tea. Be sure and come back for when we do the two new core actions. But it won't hurt you to um, listen to this again. It kind of, I find that when I do these presentations myself repeatedly, I get a better understanding of the tool that I'm talking about. Good conclusion about this profiling. In my opinion, the prolonged diffuse disaster we are experiencing is only going to get worse. Sorry, folks, that's John Call's opinion, and will last for the foreseeable future. We have some vaccines now. How long they'll be effective with respect to these new variants is don't know. We need to administer to the vast majority of 329 million Americans. That's going to be an undertaking. Therefore, as a prudent disaster behavioral health scientist, I believe we should prepare ourselves, our families, and our communities to deal with the ongoing prolonged stress of a pandemic that could last for years. And of course, these acute, localized disasters like they've experienced in Texas and here with the freezing weather, they're not going to stop. Tornadoes are not going to stop. Hurricanes aren't going to stop. So, welcome to Stress First Aid Training. SFA is a set of supportive actions designed to help you with self care and peer support to mitigate the negative impacts of stress. What is Stress First Aid? It's a framework to improve recovery from stress reactions both in oneself and in peers. It's based on research supporting the value of key elements that are related to recovery from different types of ongoing adversity. The framework aims to support and validate good friendship, mentorship, and leadership. The potential strategies identified within each element were derived from work with military professionals. Stress first aid fosters longevity on the job. It can reduce stigma by changing culture. When it becomes a part of training from the start of a career, acknowledgement of stress and stress reaction becomes a matter of fact, a common sense approach that reduces the stigma. SFA addresses stress reactions before they create larger problems that can derail health, relationships, etc. Flexibility and tiny steps are emphasized. Stress first aid should always be tailored in a flexible way to fit your personality and style, as well as your capacity to help others in any given moment. It should look different for each person who implements it and within each context it's implemented within. The timing and context are important to how one uses SFA. What you can achieve with any interaction depends on a whole bunch of factors, such as how much time you have, where you are, how open a person is to hearing what you have to say, and how long after the incident the conversation takes place. Mentoring and problem solving are highlighted. Your role may be to provide immediate support and possible assistance, either verbally or through your actions, to someone reacting to overwhelming stress in a highly stressful moment. Like, say, a citizen coming to a pod the first time. Or you may need to help a peer problem solve and manage tasks that seem overwhelming to them when they've been under significant stress for an extended period of time. Let's say a colleague that you've been working with, deployed with over several times at different pods, having a conflict with another peer. SFA is not meant to address all ranges of issues. It's a first aid model, and it's not designed to deal with lifelong problems or personality issues or serious mental health issues. These require more intensive interventions. Now, bridging to higher care is recommended when indicated. And always think in terms of referring a person to an employee assistance program or a mental health provider or to a stress response team member at the pod or other behavioral health professional who might be volunteering at the pod if they're having difficulty adjusting and are experiencing disabling or persistent stress reactions. In short, effective short term treatments are oftentimes, many times, available, and being a bridge to that type of care can be, may be, your most helpful stress first aid action. This is the stress continuum model. It was developed as a visual tool for assessing an individual's stress experiences, zones of stress, and stress responses. It forms the foundation of stress first aid. It also indicates that four possible types of stress injury, trauma, loss, inner conflict, moral injury, and long term chronic stress or wear and tear might move a person from the yellow zone of stress to the orange zone or to the red zone. You see, stress responses lie along a spectrum of severity and type, from transient and mild to chronic and debilitating. Now, the continuum has four zones: ready, green; reacting, yellow; injured, orange; ill, red. It's important to note that 100% of people will react when faced with significantly stressful experiences. Let me repeat that: 100% of people. I have to admit, I was stressed out the first time I went to a pod to get my vaccination because even though I've trained to work in pods, I didn't know how this particular pod was going to work. And that confusion and uncertainty was stressful. The way in which we respond will depend on many factors, including how prepared we are for the stressor and how we interpret it. A person's reaction can range relatively rapidly from green to yellow to orange to red and back again. Now, stress first aid was adapted from the Navy Marine Corps Combat Operational Stress First Aid. For those of you that don't know, I interned in the United States Air Force and served a tour of duty as an Air Force psychologist. So I have a particular affinity for the different services, behavioral health programs, and still remain a member of the Air Force Clinical Psychologists Association. Stress first aid, in part, was designed to reduce stigma by showing that people can go in and out of ranges of stress reactions frequently, based on a variety of factors. This model acknowledges that within this range of reactions to stress, a person can go from being in optimal functioning, feeling good, mentally and physically fit, mission focused, calm, motivated, into what's called the yellow zone. In the yellow zone, a person can feel more irritable, anxious, or down, have less motivation, loss of focus, have trouble sleeping, or have muscle tension or other physical changes. But these are transient reactions. Movement into the orange zone is usually caused by an accumulation of different types of stressors or a pretty severe stressor. In the orange zone, you start to see more severe and persistent distress or impairment. The person doesn't feel like themselves, or they may have a loss of control of their stress reactions. They might feel strong panic, depression, rage, guilt, or blame. In this zone, it starts to feel like the stress leaves a scar, and the person is at high risk for having trouble functioning and strong or persistent distress. The red zone is usually reserved for diagnoses like PTSD, depression, anxiety, or substance abuse. What signifies a person being in the red zone is that their symptoms are very persistent or worsen over time. The person experiences severe distress or has significant difficulty functioning at work or in their home life. The stress first aid model was designed to help people move themselves or their peers or citizens that they're working with from the red and orange zone back to the yellow or green zone. The ethos in many high stress work cultures like the military, law enforcement, EMS, fire, has been that after a difficult event, one should be able to tough it out. And this is still the case, unfortunately, in many of these settings, where the stigma associated with reacting to stress or stress injury behavior is still very real, and people will try to conceal stress reactions. However, it's usually not possible to keep these behaviors hidden for long, especially from family members, peers, and friends. When a peer recognizes that someone is in trouble, it's important to try to assist in some way. Getting this individual connected with the next level of help as soon as possible may help prevent their reaction from progressing into the red zone. And once an individual has moved into the red zone, the goal is to help get them into treatment as soon as possible. We are seeing more stress reactions now than we did a year and a half ago. And it's impacting our health as well, in my opinion. It was reported in the last 2 days that the life expectancy of Americans has decreased for the first time since before World War II over the last 12 months. The stress first aid is based on research literature that says that people tend to do better in ongoing stressful circumstances when they have one or more of five essential elements. Now, these elements are one, being able to move towards a greater feeling of safety, of personal safety, being able to calm themselves, feeling connected to other people, feeling that they will be able to get through what they're having to deal with, that they're competent and have the skill to, to handle what they're living through. And then lastly, having a sense of optimism or faith or hope. Stress first aid maps onto these five elements and adds two more core actions: check and coordinate, because it's a long term model and it's designed to help oneself and one's peers and the citizens that one works with. The stress first aid model is initiated when a person experiences one or more stressful circumstances. Now, it's different from models like critical incident stress management or critical incident stress debriefing, in that SFA is only initiated if the person is showing evidence of experiencing stress reaction. It's also different because the stressors could occur at home and only be detected by fellow peers, family members. Checking in with self or others has been added to the five essential elements. It involves observing, paying attention, and checking in on peers on a regular basis so that you know their baseline functioning and behavior and can therefore see stress induced changes in behavior or functioning. This action should be ongoing and continuous, occurring even before stressors or reactions occur. In high stress jobs, and listen, guys, volunteering for a disaster is a high stress job. Working in a pod is a high stress job. Everybody who comes to a pod is stressed out to one degree or another. In high stress jobs, everyone should be checking on the well being of themselves and peers to regularly intervene to see if you see a stress reaction. Coordinate has also been added to the 5 essential elements. Coordinate serves as a reminder that this is a first aid model. It includes bridging people to higher care as needed. This action should also be continuous. It involves always being aware of additional resources that you may need to access yourself or share with a peer if your SFA actions don't sufficiently alleviate stress reactions. Once stressors provoke distress or loss of functioning, there are 5 core SFA actions that can be considered. Cover maps onto helping a person feel safer. We we talked about check, coordinate, and cover last Friday during part 1. Calm involves calming the person, calming them down or staying calm through an extended difficult experience. Connect involves helping a person feel a greater sense of connection to others, which may be peers, mentors, or family members. This is important because when people go into the orange zone, they often isolate themselves from others and lessen the possibility of social support. Making connections with others has been shown to be very helpful in recovery from many types of stress. These 2 core actions, calm and connect, are the 2 core actions that we're going to be talking about today. Competence, core action number 6, involves helping people to feel more capable in a number of ways, including feeling more capable to perform their duties at work, feeling more capable to handle their own stress reactions, or feeling better able to function and recover from stressful situations. Confidence maps onto helping people have more confidence in themselves, more confidence in their life, in their work mission, or leadership. It can also sometimes involve helping reduce guilt or anger, or helping them make meaning or grapple with philosophical questions that arise as a result of the stressors in their life. Core action 6 and 7, competence and confidence, we will be discussing in greater detail next week, next Friday. The goal of SFA is to move people towards wellness, away from the red zone, orange zone, into the yellow zone or green zone. Now, we got 7 SFA core actions. Check, coordinate, cover. Talked about them last week. Calm and connect. We're going to talk about those 2 today. Competence and confidence, we'll talk about those next week. Each of these 7 core actions is made up of 3 components. Contact. Now, contact explains how to establish a partnership, how to make contact with the target person in a crisis through respect and compassion. Question. Question explains just that, what we are supposed to ask, what kind of data we need to collect, and what kind of information that we need to find out so that we can manage the process leading towards what? An action, act, the third component, which describes how to deliver the information in a way that makes it likely the person will accept it and comply with what we feel is appropriate for them to do. There are some basic essential SFA skills that all actions require. All core actions require these three basic skills. First basic skill is recognize, observe, paying more attention to signs of stress reactions in oneself and one's peers, one's family, the citizens as they come into the pod, recognizing when stress reactions are in the orange or red zone of the stress continuum. Another essential skill is acting early on in response to your own or a peer's stress. If you see something, do something either for yourself or for the peer. We've all heard if you see something, do something with respect to a terrorist event, but it also applies to the emotional event of the stress reaction. Or you may need to say something to the person themselves or to somebody they trust. And lastly, know. Knowing at least two resources that you would either access yourself or offer to a peer in distress. It is helpful to know a range of both organizational and community resources. When you volunteer in a pod and there's a citizen who's anxious, have you found out during your just in time training who to refer that person to? Something to ask your supervisor. Remember that SFA is both a peer support and a self care model that can be used to support peers and to increase your own self awareness and improve your early response to stressors in your life. So, how do you use SFA? Here's an example of how SFA can be used in peer support. So, ideally, what you would do ahead of any SFA action is to pay attention and be aware of what's happening in a highly stressful moment or in the person's ongoing circumstances. You're you're constantly checking. Paying attention in this way allows you to see changes in a way that the person is reacting or functioning that would indicate that they are stressed. Then you would either act to mitigate the stressful circumstance in the moment or approach the person to together decide what they most need. These choices are usually based on what type of stress reaction they are having, what type of stress reactions they are having. And these are the most typical stress reaction manifestations. These green examples here. You see, each one of the stress reactions could be handled differently, depending upon your personality, on what's going on in the moment or in the person's life, what they're most likely to respond to or be able to tolerate, and what makes the most sense. The model allows you to be both practical and creative, depending upon many factors, and should look different with every exchange that you have with a peer. It's not a one size fits all model. Now, that can make it challenging to use for some people because there's no one prescribed sort of action. But the hope is that it gives people permission to use a model in a way that makes the most sense to their role and personality and the roles and personality of their peers or who they're working with. So let's take a look at that. Let's say anxiety is the stress manifestation issue. Well, one could use the calm core action with anxiety. But likewise, one might use the cover core action. A third possible core action is competence or some combination of those three. And as you see, each of these stress manifestations has been mapped out to a different core action. That's what's cool about SFA. It is 7 core actions, each one made up of 3 components designed to give us practical first aid tools, emotional first aid tools, always knowing that if something is required beyond emotional first aid, we bridge to a higher level. Pretty cool, huh? So let's take a look at today's focus: calm and connect. Component 4, calm. Now this slide shows the major components of the calm. There is some overlap between the actions in cover that we talked about last week and calm. Actions that promote one of these two actions can often help with the other. The major difference is that while the goal of cover is safety, calm's goal is to reduce the intensity of physiological, emotional, and behavioral activation. The first and most basic procedure of calm is simply to stop, to quiet, to cease physical exertion if possible. Some examples of this are sit down, lie down, put down any items, relax with the goal of slowing heart rate. Regaining composure will help to restore cognitive functioning. The word compose means to help to pull back together that which is scattered or fragmented into more orderly and coherent state. In the calm action, you can help people compose themselves by drawing their attention away from anxiety producing thoughts and feeling and refocusing them on something else. I'm going to be having some actual examples in a few moments in some video vignettes. The next component of calm is to rest, including helping the person recuperate and get better sleep for as long as is necessary. The final component of calm is soothing, which means to reduce the intensity of potentially destructive emotions like fear and anger by providing a calm physical presence and listening empathetically. Calm actions are also supposed to be relatively simple. In the context of peer support, the action you choose could be involve simple things like remaining calm yourself, reassuring the person just by your authority and presence, your calm presence, showing understanding when the person is having a stress reaction, validating the things that they might feel concerned about, provide information about the fact that it's natural to have reactions in situations like this, provide information about resources, provide some brief instruction on how to ground themselves or to breathe in situations where they are overly activated. A calming action, managing reactions. I am now going to provide some information about some more detailed calming actions one can utilize with a peer, friend, family member, or oneself. There are basically 4 steps to managing emotional reactions. You need to explain the rationale of what you're doing. You need to identify the distressing reaction that you're going to deal with and possible triggers. You need to teach the skills to the individual, and you create a plan. So let's say you have a peer, a friend, and here's some wording you could use to explain your rationale. During a pandemic, we can keep experiencing strong physical and emotional reactions that affect our mood, wear down our physical health, cause problems in relationships, in decision making, with getting things done. We may have reactions to stressful situations and to reminders that add significantly to our distress. So, in your questioning, you want to help the target person identify the types of reactions they are experiencing in the moment, and have them identify how distressing that reaction is on a scale from 1 to 10. And then likewise have the target person describe how they've tried to manage these reactions, and if what they've tried hasn't been successful. So there are 4 basic skill categories that one can use in this calming attempt. There are calming skills, teaching calming skills like breathing, retraining, or self-talk or meditation. There are skills to put thoughts and feelings into words, various writing exercises and journaling. There's skills to manage and to recognize and manage triggers, reminders. And then there's skills to develop a personalized strategy to manage specific reactions like anger, grief, sleep difficulties, etc. So let's take a look at the first one, some calming skills. So when we're anxious, what happens is that the sympathetic nervous system becomes hyperactive. We breathe faster and shallower. Uh, we our heart races, etc. So some basic elements to breathing retraining that one can use with oneself is remembering that you first take a slow breath through the nose, extending the stomach for a count of 5. Then you let out the breath slowly through the nose, again to the count of 5. You count to 4 between each breath. You repeat for 10 or 15 times. And for children, you can have them pick out their favorite color to think about when breathing in, and then using gray for when breathing out. Okay, that's a nice verbal description, but let's take a look at an actual vignette.
Dr. Call, we can't hear the audio.
Can't hear that, huh?
Correct.
Teresa?
Correct. We cannot hear it.
Well, darn. um, hmm.
Try just the volume on your computer, maybe.
Well, first off, if we are not able to solve this problem during this presentation, I will upload this vignette to the SRT YouTube channel, which I'll explain a little bit more about later. Teresa, did you try like increasing the volume of your own headset?
No, Dana has a suggestion though. If it's a Zoom setting, you may have to stop presenting and then click share sound in the lower left corner.
Share sound, lower left corner. Lower left corner of what?
Probably the presentation.
Lower left corner of your screen where you have your mic settings.
Okay, so, oh, I got you. Say, okay, speakers. Maybe same as system?
No, we still can't hear it.
Hmm.
Do you have it in a separate web page on your computer?
Can you hear it now?
No, we can't. Can you bring it up in Explorer and share that?
Breathing deeply.
What about now?
Actually,
Send instructions to me that, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Tom, I can see that you have a lot going on, and I know everyone's feeling a bit overwhelmed. And can I share a way with you that might be able to take a bit of the edge off?
I don't feel like I can relax right now. I just have too much I need to do.
Yeah.
Is it complicated?
It's not complicated, and I can understand that the thought of relaxing amidst all that you have to do seems a bit much in itself. It's not so much about relaxing as it is taking a momentary break from all the things that you have to think about. And are you at all concerned that if you relax, you're going to forget important things you have to do or remember?
Yeah, I find myself having to rehearse the list.
Okay, I get it. How about we try it, see how it feels, and you might find that you actually are able to remember the list even better. Have you had any experience with breathing techniques?
No, but isn't it just breathing deeply?
Actually, it's more about breathing slowly from the diaphragm. Have you had any negative experiences with relaxation techniques before?
No.
If you have any discomfort with this, we'll stop immediately. You're okay with my sharing this breathing technique with you?
Yeah, sure.
Good. Before we begin, let me describe it a bit. Each breath in and each breath out is done very slowly. You'll breathe in from your diaphragm. If you would, place your hand on your stomach.
Okay.
And also, again, breathe very slowly. Slowing the breath helps calm us down. As we go through this, notice the sensation of your breathing. Is your nose pretty clear?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, good. Sit comfortably.
Okay.
Do you prefer to close your eyes or have them open?
Closed.
Okay, feel free to do whatever makes you feel comfortable as we go along. There'll be 4 sets of breathing in and out. Let's begin. So begin with an inhalation through your nose. Make it a long, slow breath. Then hold for a count of 2. Exhale through the nose and bring the thought calm to your mind. At the end, hold for 4. Okay, a slow and steady breath in, again through the nose. Hold for a moment. Exhale from the mouth this time. Again, repeating the thought, calm to yourself. Good. Hold for a count of 4. Now, third breath in, this time through the mouth. And again, hold for a moment. And exhale from the nose. Hold for 4. Lastly, breathe in through the mouth again. Hold, then slowly exhale through the mouth. Now resume your normal breathing and slowly open your eyes. How was that for you?
It was nice. Definitely had an effect.
Good, good. I'm going to give you an instruction card for future reference, and it'll help you remember what we covered.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. You can use this technique whenever you wish, but I would suggest first practicing it when you're not overly anxious or stressed, say when you first get up in the morning or bedtime. Once you know how to do it, you can use the type of breathing anytime, except, say, when driving. Like when you're waiting in line or feeling anxious, filling out forms, or beginning to feel uncomfortable, whenever.
That sounds good. Should I do it the same way we did it today?
I tried some different combinations of nose-mouth breathing with you to give you a sense of what feels best. And when you do this on your own, you can also experiment with whatever combinations feel best for you. Also, you can use whatever word is calming to you as you exhale. As I said, we found that this is really helpful on a number of levels for your system, just to give it a break.
It sounds so simple, but I definitely could use little breaks during the next week. I just have to remember to use it. I appreciate you sitting down and sharing this with me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, there's an example of an individual who at a disaster service site, could be a pod, which is sharing a breathing exercise with someone. It could be a situation where they have got their inoculation and they're sitting in the waiting area, and maybe they experienced a moderate panic attack. Now, another technique that can be utilized in a calming action is writing and journaling. There's strong evidence that issues can be helped by having a target person write about them. Uh, Concerns about the future, intrusive memories, nightmares, etc. Now, there is an alert we should be aware of. There are some people for whom writing task is not appropriate because they're not able to manage the distress that arises. And who are those individuals? Those are individuals who are suicidal, who have demonstrate borderline or psychotic features, who are substance dependent, who are experiencing extreme anxiety, or who experience real guilt over some action that, in fact, where they caused harm. Some wording that one could use with this particular technique of journaling are provided here. Distressing thoughts are oftentimes signs of unfinished business. This is why these thoughts keep popping into our mind. We're going to help you with them by writing them down. At the moment, it may feel like they're too big or too distressing to handle. It takes time for the mind to get used to things. Writing about your concerns will help you to start digesting these heavy memories so that they will stop interfering in your daily life. So the instructions that you provide somebody about this type of journaling is start writing about whatever's distressing you in as much detail as you can. Try to include detail about your feelings, both emotionally and physically, and about the things you may be thinking and saying to yourself, try to keep writing for about 30 minutes so that you really have a good opportunity to process what happened without interruption. And if you don't feel comfortable writing, you can also speak into a voice recorder or draw a picture, make a piece of art, or write a poem or a song. A third area of work is managing triggers. Survivors may be triggered by many different experiences or situations. These could be thoughts and memories, feelings, body reactions, but they could also be smells or what one sees or hears. Learning how to cope with these triggers helps the target person realize that they have control over their distressing reactions. Here's an example of wording that you can use with someone you're working with about a trigger issue. One outcome of your experience is that you have learned that things that remind you of the disaster make you feel anxious or sad. All sorts of places and all sorts of things. They might now remind you of that disaster. Things that you can see every day or noises that you hear or smells that you notice. Or you may have experiences in your life that trigger strong reactions because of the chronic stress you're enduring or because of your fears for the future. The steps you follow here are identify the trigger situation, identify how this is different from the actual disaster. It's a reminder, not the actual event, and identify strategies to use before, during, and after the trigger. With respect to strategies, remind yourself that this experience is just a reminder, have realistic expectations, reassure yourself, put words into strong emotions, and writing often helps to put feelings into words. Other strategies are getting support from others, engaging in some positive or social activity to remind yourself that you have mastered the situation. Use spiritual or religious practices. Review your personal strengths. Use relaxation strategies. Okay, so I've just done a bunch of slides and I've said a bunch of words. Let's take a look at an example, a realistic example. And what's happened here, to set the scene, is that this young woman is been involved in a earthquake, and she and her family have been at a family shelter, and they're about ready to return home. And she's concerned about various reminders and is anxious. So let's see how the stress response team member handled this interaction to work with core action number 4, calm.
Hi, Marta.
Hi.
I know you'll be leaving the shelter today to go back home. The earthquake was pretty bad, and I'm glad we could provide some safety and help to your family during this first week. I know you must be looking forward to getting home, but maybe there are some things I can help you with for when you get home.
Well, I keep thinking a lot about the earthquake, and our apartment really shook, but do you think there will be more aftershocks?
After an earthquake, there will be aftershocks. They usually get less and less strong over time, but sometimes one can be pretty big, but not as big as the earthquake itself. I can tell you're worried. I wonder what you start to think when there's an aftershock.
Well, everyone in the shelter is always talking about the next big one, and that makes me worry that something worse is going to happen. And the aftershock last night was awful because I woke up and my heart was beating so fast, and I couldn't go back to sleep even after the aftershock was over. And I just kept thinking, what if the bookcase had slid into me instead of the wall?
I can imagine that would be pretty scary for you. So one of the things you need is a plan to help you with your reactions to aftershocks. Aftershocks are very common and a strong kind of reminder. They make us remember the danger of the earthquake and even make us imagine worse things that could happen. That's what your heart rate was telling you. The most important thing to be able to do is to find ways to help calm down afterwards.
Like how?
There are a couple things you can do. First, you can tell yourself, it's okay that I feel scared again. The earthquake was pretty scary, and it hasn't been that long ago since it happened. Then you can help yourself by saying, aftershocks are going to happen. It's not the same. It's not like when the earthquake first happened. Then tell yourself how it's different. I know from your father that the apartment building has been inspected, and it's safe to live there.
Yeah.
He also told me that during this week, before you go home, he has had all the furniture, like the bookcases, bolted to the wall. You need to remind yourself of that.
Well, yeah, I'm really glad he did that because I don't think I would want to go home and if I had to worry about the bookcase.
Exactly. I know that while you've been here at this shelter, you and your family have made a family preparedness plan of what to do in case of emergencies. This is another way to think differently if there's an aftershock.
Well, that family plan is a lot more helpful than I thought it was going to be. I feel a lot better about what to do now.
So let's talk now about what you can do for your heart rate. Your body felt like it was in danger, but it really wasn't. It was like a false alarm. I know you're 13 and it doesn't always feel good to let others know if you're scared, but being alone can sometimes make it harder to get your heart rate down. It's okay to say to someone else, that was scary. Even your parents or close friends. I'll bet you have ways to calm yourself down.
Well, yeah, I like to listen to music.
Perfect. Then prepare yourself by having some music you like to listen to and use it. Make sure you choose something that isn't too loud or too fast so it can help your heart rate to go down. Practice that ahead of time. That can help you get back to sleep if you've been awakened by an aftershock. Sound like a good idea?
Yeah, that's cool.
Let's look at other ways we can help you with reminders as you get ready to go back home. Let me explain a little bit more what a reminder is. A reminder is something that happens now that makes you think about and remember the earthquake. Reminders can be places you go, people and things you see, or something you do, like an activity, for instance. Let's talk about a couple of reminders that you might have when you get back home.
Well, I know that our apartment building's safe to live in, but there's still this big crack in the bedroom wall where the bookcase hit, and I don't think I could go to sleep looking at that.
Well, that's also a good example of a reminder you can do something about.
Well, no, I can't because my dad said that the people who own the apartment building are waiting for the insurance people to fix it, and that'll take forever.
Any thoughts of what you can do in the meantime? There has to be something you can do so you don't have to stare right at it before you go to bed each night.
Well, like what, just not look?
Now, that would be pretty hard.
Well, I could hide it, right? Like, I could put a favorite poster over it or something.
That's a great idea. Just make sure it's big enough to really cover more than just the crack, so it makes it something positive you look at before you go to sleep.
Yeah, that's cool, and it would be great not to see that crack every night.
Perfect. There are other kinds of reminders. They can be something you hear, a physical sensation or feeling. Like if you're having a test at school and feeling nervous, that feeling can remind you of how you felt during the earthquake. How about if we think about one of the types of reminders that might get to you when you get back home? Like TV, for instance.
Well, I don't think I'd want to watch TV about the earthquake, and I don't really know what to do about that because my dad always watches the news.
Maybe we can talk to your parents about that before you go home. You deserve to be able to enjoy some of your favorite programs and to have time with your dad without worrying about being reminded when you don't want to be. Would that be okay?
Yeah, and it's probably good that my dad doesn't watch too much TV about the earthquake either.
You're right. You're a really good learner. You know, it's a good idea to be aware of more reminders when you get home, in your neighborhood, or at school. Just remember some of the things we talked about and try to use them with these other reminders. If you find that it's getting harder for you, you can get some help, like from counselors at school, that can build on what we have done here today.
Well, thanks for everything. It was really helpful.
You're welcome. I'm glad we spent some time together.
So we've just seen 3 techniques: breathing, we've talked about journaling, and then we saw a technique on dealing with triggers. After teaching and practicing the skill with the target person on how to manage that distressing reaction, how to calm, you want to then make a specific plan with that person as to when to use these skills in their daily lives. And you emphasize the importance of trying the skill for at least a week. So now we're going to component, I should say, core action 5, connect. There are 3 components of the SFA core action connect. As with all SFA actions, these components are designed to be adapted to fit your setting, your personality, and the needs at that time of the individual experiencing a stress reaction. The first part is to simply be with the person. This means being present, making eye contact, listening, mentoring, and em- empathizing, accepting them and their reaction. The next is to promote connection. This could include finding trusted others for the person to talk or spend time with if you're not in the best position to be that support. It could also mean fostering contact with others, such as by pairing peers up during stressful situations, creating team projects, encouraging contact with supportive others. The final is to reduce the person's sense of isolation. Isolation can often occur when that orange zone reactions make a person irritable and less able to function on the job. Or if the person withdraws because they feel ashamed in some way. Assisting in such a case may involve helping to improve the person's understanding of the situation and of stress reactions. Often the SFA provider must help the person to see that stress reactions are understandable and acceptable. This area of reducing isolation also involves correcting misconceptions and misperceptions in order to help reduce the stressed person's alienation and isolation. This includes clearing up misconceptions held by the person about their own stress reactions, as well as those held by others. Doing so will effectively restore the individual's trust in them and restore the trust of others. In its simplest form, you can help reduce isolation by simply inviting and including the person into a department or crew or other activities. Research has shown that people who are experiencing significant stress may prefer different types of social support. Some may want to be included in an activity whereas others may prefer having casual, friendly encounters, receiving help and information in strictly practical ways, or directly discussing emotional problems or reactions. Those who have post traumatic stress reactions or who want to repress their reactions may avoid direct discussion of emotional problems and reactions because it brings adverse events to their attention again. And frankly, those who have severe post traumatic stress reactions should not be forced to re experience or discuss those reactions. These connect actions are designed to help a person feel that they're not alone, that there are caring others around, and that there are many ways to be connected with those others. Social connectedness is a strong protective factor following many types of adversity. Connect actions that have been identified by those who work in stressful jobs include asking the person what social support they have or what social support they need or prefer, helping them link with supportive others, both at home and on the job, providing support to the peer yourself or finding a mentor who's gone through similar situations, addressing potentially negative social influences on the job, such as people who might be judging the person or spreading rumors because of their stress reactions. A connection activity, a specific set of tools, which I'm now going to discuss, uh, about making that one can use in when working with a target person over more than one occasion. Again, the rationale for fostering social connectedness is that it's been consistently identified as a key protective factor, and lack of social support has been identified as predicting poor outcomes. Social support from family, friends, and community resources enhances recovery. This particular tool is specifically called for people in crises or under stress who have experienced disruptions in their social support network, who are having difficulties finding mutually supportive relationships, for those who are overwhelmed and isolated, for those who want to be available to provide support, maybe avoiding others, for those who complain of limited social supports or lack of certain connections to meet their needs. You want to get the individual's buy-in. That means you want to make the concept concrete. Help the survivor name the different ways that positive social support can help. Sometimes you can set the stage with storytelling. For example, describing how communities come together during times of adversity. Or have the individual describe family traditions or rituals of coming together. Telling an illustrative story from your own life about how social support helped you. Okay, what are the steps of this more in-depth connection technique? Well, you want to develop a social connections map. And I will describe that in a minute. And then you want to review the social connections map with the individual and then make a social support plan. So, to create a social connections map, you use paper and pens to map or draw out your most important social connections relationships to get a feel for the big picture. You tell the individual you only want to put in people who are readily accessible at the moment. Start with people in your community and then add people who you mainly communicate with by phone, text, or email. You can put in individuals, groups, or organizations. And we're talking about no more than 10 of these. So what does it look like? Here's an example. Is you put yourself or the target person, if you're working with a target person, in the middle. And then each spoke is a person, group, or organization. And you begin to develop that map. Ask about, is your mother or father available? Husband, wife, partner, children, therapists, teachers and mentors, friends, clergy, siblings, co-workers. You do a map review. Are there different types of supports that are missing? Are there loved ones or friends who are not currently connected with or but want to be? Who do you want to spend more time with? Who do you want to spend less time with? Are there some relationships that you think you need to improve? Are there ways of helping others? Do you want to increase your social activities or give to others by joining a community group? After identifying areas in need of improvement, you make that social support plan. You identify one area to change and you make the action plans. It must be concrete with specifics on what the survivor should do. And you review the action plan with the target person to make sure it's understood. After identifying areas, well, we just got through that. So one of the things you want to do is to have a, with all of these more in-depth techniques, both in Calm as well as Connect, you want to try to have at least another session a week or so later and find out what the target person experienced. Review any kind of issues that they had with respect to what they perceived as failure in or lack of success in the application of the plan. Brainstorm with them ways to alter the plan and then encourage them to use the plan a week further with another review. Okay, this concludes the discussion of the core actions, Calm and Connect, as well as a more detailed discussion of particular techniques which can be utilized with the target person that you have more time working with. Sometimes you will not be able to spend much time at all with an individual. For example, a citizen going through a pod. In other instances, you might have the ability to meet with the target person over several sessions, let's call them. Let's say with a peer who is working with you on your job, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, or a colleague who works with you repeatedly at the different pods. So it's time for you to take charge. This individual has attended one of my presentations and is now determined to do just that, to take charge. Remember the purpose of the Medical Reserve Corps. MRC units engage their volunteers to strengthen public health, improve emergency response capabilities, and build community resiliency. MRC units prepare for and respond to natural disasters as well as other emergencies affecting public health. That's what we're doing now with respect to the pandemic. Your next steps, if you're not already a member, a volunteer of the Oklahoma Medical Reserve Corps or the SRT, visit okmrc.org. I want to take this time also to discuss or just to mention in more detail the YouTube presence that we are developing. We are going to be and are in the process of uploading to the SRT Inc. YouTube channel various videos regarding both stress first aid as well as PTSD. I would urge you to search out that channel and subscribe. We hope to develop multiple playlists and have practical video trainings that can be reviewed and utilized by our OKMRC and stress response team members. Before we end today, I want to turn it over to Teresa, and who has been monitoring the chat. We want to have a period of discussion. We had about a half-hour discussion the last time. I would like to uh, continue that discussion and ask and answer questions. So Teresa, over to you.
Okay, right now we actually don't have any questions in the chat. So if any of you have questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and ask any questions that you have.
This is a good time for discussion. I would particularly like to find out have some thoughts of people who have actually worked at pods so far.
Yeah, I feel like this is Nina Barker. I've been volunteering at the pod since December, and I feel like this is very applicable. Let me turn my camera on so I'm not just a random voice. We do have a lot of folks coming in that are just stressed, not knowing like even where to stand in line, what it is they're supposed to do. They may not speak English or in cases like be able to read. And so, being able to identify when someone's having those kind of difficulties and like social distancingly, like hold their hands through the process has been helpful. Or if they see the line is moving really fast and then things just stop, taking the time to go through and tell them, we're waiting for the vaccines to hit the appropriate temperature. We've pulled out another batch, please continue to be patient, and just letting them know like you're in this line now, you're going to go over here, and walking them through the process more than once, because some of them are extra nervous about what's going on and maybe didn't catch the information the first time, seems to really help with managing the stress. And then all of us, the volunteers, knowing the information of what's available where in the process is also helpful, so that we're in the loop and also help manage the stress and even manage our own stress with that kind of awareness. So I think all of this applies for everything, like every day, not just volunteering.
That's correct. And,
So thank you so much.
yeah, traditionally you have an acute localized disaster, and, people rush in and it's like stretching the rubber band, and people work long hours, and they kind of like, they get stressed out, but, eventually, but because it's an acute disaster, there is an end to it. In a prolonged diffuse disaster like this, there is no end. I don't think there's going to be an end in my lifetime, you know? And so we're, we're in a marathon, and we're going to have to learn how to manage the stress and not just suffer through it. Um, there's like, Nina, how many pods have you worked so far?
I think I volunteered like maybe 8 times, or no, more than that. But I've worked at the pod, the pods in Oklahoma City and in Cleveland County,
Mm-hmm.
and they all have different processes, I've discovered as well. But Oklahoma County seems to have like a well-oiled machine now, being very consistent in what they do. And Cleveland County also has their processes.
So you've worked since December. So here we are in the middle for approximately 2 months. I mean, because it was like in the middle of December. And you've done 8. Well, okay, gosh. I bet you we have pods for 10, 12 more months. I mean, and that's a heck of a lot of pods. And, can at some point, there's going to be a heck of a lot of people saying, well, I'm just burnt out volunteering.
Yeah, we also, well, at least I'm trying to recruit more people, letting them know this is going to be going on for a while. Don't think because you haven't been helping since, December, January, that we don't need you. And I remember Dom saying a couple weeks ago, I think that there were like over 1,500 people awaiting their background checks.
Yeah. Janet, I know you've worked some, have you had a chance to work a pod, Janet?
I do pods on every Friday,
Okay.
and I've been doing that pretty much since December, because that's the one day a week that my boss kind of gives me the leeway to. I'm lucky, I'm very fortunate where I work that they allow me to bail on Fridays and work the pods Friday afternoons. So it's been, I tried to limit it to that to keep my sanity and to be able to get other things done as well. But people have been, the people that I really, really feel bad for and feel a lot of empathy for is the healthcare people. They don't volunteer. They're there every day from early morning till late in the evening. And I spend time speaking with them as well as the people going through the pods, because they are getting burnout. They are feeling the stress of this.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the frustration of people ragging them about what they aren't getting done instead of seeing what they are getting done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's just to watch somebody do something like that and keep going even through their hard times is very encouraging for us. And when I do other trainings for other entities, I'm also plugging MRC. I'm saying, hey guys, they need help. If you live in Oklahoma, come on, get in here.
Mhm.
Because it's necessary.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, there is no way that the 3 departments of health in Oklahoma, even if they had the secretaries and the janitors help with the injections, to do all the necessary injections without volunteers.
Yeah.
Just not enough people.
And if people don't step up and volunteer, it's not going to get done, and they only have themselves to blame.
That's right. I did, yeah, it's, and it's, I did some mathematics. It's phenomenal how many people are going to have their needle in their arm uh, to get a sufficient number of people inoculate just in Oklahoma. Any other thoughts or experiences people can share?
I've been working pods since January and in Oklahoma County and Canadian County, and have had several different experiences as well. And people are stressed about it. I have found that people come in stressed about it, and once you just simply explain that it's just unprecedented, the demand for the vaccine, and that unfortunately it's going to take some time to get it done, they accept that, and it seems to relieve their stress. I also had an incident in Canadian County where a gentleman had a reaction in the exit room and had to be taken out. I was literally holding him in a chair, and he was taken out on a stretcher. And so everybody's demeanor in the room changed. And so then that was a whole different stress added to the recipients who had just got the same vaccine put in their arm.
Yeah.
And so it was, it is a tough time for everybody, and the volunteers and the nurses who are putting the vaccines in the arms, and the volunteers. I mean, that day in particular stressed me out. So, it's a tough situation. So.
Exactly.
This is something that we mentioned in the last session last week, is that a lot of what we do is kind of just relieving stress for the people that are about to get their vaccines and talking with the ones that are actually getting their vaccines. We've had a lot of patients that have had panic attacks. They really are just getting so worked up in their head about what it's going to be that, by the time they actually get the vaccination, you know, with a few distraction techniques and some deep breathing and, you know, some of the other things Dr. Call just kind of talked about in this presentation. Once we kind of got that through, they didn't even realize that they had gotten the vaccine and it was over. So yeah, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress and a lot of misinformation out in the community that we're having to combat and try to, you know, re-educate in a factual, research-based way. Yeah, than we normally do. And because this is so new, this isn't something that we normally do for like flu shots or Shingrix or anything else. So yeah, there's a lot of stress out there, not just for the patients like I was referring to, but also for the staff of having that continual, you know, new experience with every new patient about, you know, how to therapeutically communicate with them and how to break things down into layman's terms so that they can understand, you know, as we're trying to educate them, you know, what's going on with the vaccine. So yeah, seen a lot of all of it.
There is a lot of that going on out there, and you do have to approach each one of them differently, and each one of them have their own concerns and are dealing with their own set of problems that range from, you know, being isolated for so long. I've been working a lot of the 65 plus pods, and they're going through a lot. They've lost loved ones. They've been scared. They've not been around family. They've been, you know, they're scared of the vaccine. They're scared of the virus. And it just goes on. And it's all the political stuff surrounding the vaccine and the virus just compiles everything. And they look to you for the answers. So
The first responders have so much training in protecting themselves. And I'm seeing that it's the first responders that are experiencing the most stress over the needle.
they're experiencing the most stress, but they're the ones that's used to being the caregivers and the givers, not the receivers. So they're not going to admit that, oh no, I'm good. I don't need anything. I don't need any help. I'm all right.
Yeah. Or having to fill out all of the paperwork properly.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But I think what's kind of unique too is, you know, with phase 1 and phase 2, these people, our seniors, are experiencing something they've never experienced before, a mass vaccination site. And now, if they've been in the military, you know, they may have encountered it about 40 years ago, but it's so unique, so stressful. And then by the time we get to phase 3 and 4, where the individual can go to the pharmacy, go to their doctors, they're going to be the people that probably could have handled this stress better than the group that we're inoculating right now. Plus, you add the weather issues. And I know in our pod here in Tulsa County, it's always pretty cold inside because, you know, we want to keep a lot of ventilation going, bringing in a lot of outside air. People are having to stand outside. We had one lady in our pod that was 101 years old on one of the coldest days that we experienced, but she was so spry and so happy to be there that it's just a multitude of stress elements right now on her most vulnerable. So it's just so important that we recognize that and look forward to the phase 3 and 4 when the pods will be more limited to probably people that can handle the stress better than what the current groups that we're dealing with. I'm just so thankful we're there. It's such an emotional thing to see seniors get vaccinated, be looking forward to their kids and grandkids. But it's a really double whammy for them right now with the weather, broken pipes, energy issues, everything else. Thank God we're not in Texas. I can't imagine the stress those people are going through that also need to get to the pods.
Right.
Exactly. And then spring comes up and we have tornadoes.
Well, I've worked several pods starting in mid-January, and I'm a community volunteer, so no medical, no needles for me. But I've met thousands of people literally, and I really, to me, I feel like one of my main roles there is to be that calm presence. I really appreciate this training here. I feel like that me being, while everything is so crazy, so I make sure that I've got to take care of myself first. It's like when you're on the plane and the stewardess says, when they drop down, take care of yourself first, then the screaming child. Definitely really appreciate this training being available. Thank you, doctor.
Sure.
So have any of you experienced any good things at your pods that you'd like to share with us?
I've had some positive, I've had a lot of positive feedback from a lot of the recipients of the vaccine, how grateful they were to be able to be there to get the vaccine, talked about how smoothly the pods were running, that they were really shocked when they got there to see, they thought they were going to be waiting in a long line and all that kind of thing. And then I've had, the nurse would call me over because somebody would come out in tears, and then I would go visit with her because I was actually been working the pods on a mental health capacity because I'm a crisis counselor working a FEMA grant for the COVID pandemic. So we partnered with the MRC to volunteer and work there just to offer the mental health support. But she was actually having tears of joy because she considered the vaccine the first step to being able to be with her family again. So I thought that was, very good feedback and positive, a happy note instead of a
Yeah.
sad note.
Hmm.
I've had a lot of people thank the volunteers and
Mhm.
say that if it wasn't for the volunteers, they wouldn't be able to get their vaccines.
Absolutely.
I've primarily worked the Tulsa Expo pod. I've worked a couple of outlying counties as well, but I have to say the atmosphere there is just incredible. Everyone who's come through and gotten shots have just been complimentary, especially the older side, and I feel really supported there. I think they just have it incredibly down to a great system. And my direct supervisor, that person has always been there and supporting me and looking out for me and making sure I got my breaks and everything needed. So it's been great.
It's just really good. I feel great being part of the solution, after staying at home for locked in my house for a year, actually being part of the solution and getting us out of here. It's very rewarding.
Here, that I agree with that.
And I'd say too that having that positive feedback is nice after a year of just nothing but bad news and delays and everything else, that's happened in the world. It's nice to have a little bit of positivity and to get that positive reinforcement back and to hear those kudos. And, it's something that has struck me is how excited I am that people are ready to get the vaccine, that they are ready to be part of the solution as well. And how just in this darkness that we've had for so long, it's so refreshing to see that people are excited, and they're thankful and they're grateful. And that helps, when you have those days of just being dark, to reflect back on, there are people that are actually appreciating what you're doing. So as volunteers, they appreciate that you come out in the middle of the cold, in the middle of the fairgrounds, in the middle of whatever location, you know, whatever scenario you have, they're appreciative. And that is refreshing to me. That helps. That is one of the things that I try to reflect back on when you're having a bad day. One of my coping skills is thinking back to those days where you had someone that was just like, you being here today, like, made my year. You know, that's the stuff that helps me.
There are a couple of things that I want to share with this group and get your feedback via email. My email is srt@oksrtinc.com. Okay, number one, um, I'm going to assume that everybody is a member of the Oklahoma Medical Reserve Corps. And I would invite everybody who is a member to join the stress response team. To join the stress response team, you just go to your profile and you go to the skills section your profiles at okmrc.org. You go to the skills section and you just check the SRT box. That's all you got to do. Next, the stress response team has an informal method of communication, and it's a closed Facebook group. So if you are a member, if you use Facebook, I invite you to go to the stress response team Facebook group, and it's under my name, John Call, because of Facebook rules, and you'll know that you're at the right John Call because at the home screen there's an ambulance. If you ask to be a friend of that Facebook page, what will happen is that I'll accept you as a friend and then assign you to this closed Facebook group, and it's an informal way that we communicate with the stress response team. So feel free I invite everybody to do that who hasn't already done that. There's two other things I wanted to share with you and get your feedback if you feel like you have some feedback to give through email. Number one is, guys, this is going to go on for a long time. And I'm not just saying a month or 6 months. I'm talking, we're going to be involved in this situation for a year or so. So I got two projects that I'm developing, and I want you guys to think about it and share your thoughts. One project is the idea of having the ability to do one-on-one consultation with you. The stress response team has a doxy.me account. The doxy.me is used by doctors to have virtual doctor sessions with their patients. I'm thinking about making this available to everybody in the Medical Reserve Corps that might want to have a consult. Let's say you're working in a pod, as an example, and there's an issue arises, and something to do with interpersonal behavior. It could be with a citizen, it could be with a peer, it could be with a supervisor, and it could be with yourself. And you would like to have consultation. I'm not saying treatment, I'm not saying therapy, but you would say, I would like to talk to somebody about what happened and to find out recommendations on how to handle that. So I'm thinking about developing or having this available where a person could ask for one-on-one consultation with myself and other experienced professionals, and we have a bunch of them on staff. in the stress response team. That's one idea. So think about that. Email me with your thoughts about it, pro or con. The last idea is kind of like, you know what we're doing right now? We're having a conversation. And I have found that this type of meeting can be quite beneficial. So I'm thinking about offering a monthly, bi-monthly, short, like a maximum 1 hour webinar. The National Medical Reserve Corps does a monthly webinar for unit coordinators. And it could be a situation where, let's say, Mary has learned a particular thing and would like to present a half-hour presentation, or Dennis. It could be a situation where we could have requests. I'd like to have a presentation on XYZ, or I'd like to have a presentation on how to handle this kind of problem, general kind of thing, so that we could have basically a ongoing way to get information or share information in a group format. And I'm just calling it the Stress Response Team monthly webinar. So that's something to think about. And I would like to hear pros and cons. I would like to hear topics that might be of interest, etc. And because, number one, the Stress Response Team, SRT Inc., has the money to do this. And we have the ability to do this if there is a desire to do this. So I'm just sharing it with this group because you've already expressed a desire, I volunteering, and B being here for this training. So those are my comments and for you to cogitate on.
I would like the opportunity to get together periodically and learn from everyone's experiences and learn from subject matter experts in the area, anything to help us prepare and just be ready for what's coming around the corner.
Because something's going to be coming around the corner. That's for sure.
Dr. Call, is there some kind of certificate for those of us who are non-clinical to be able to show to our affiliations, such as I'm affiliated with the United Ostomy Association and Fight Colorectal Cancer and the Cancer Alliance? Is there something that we can get to show them that we've been through this course?
I'm sure Teresa could work something out for you. Am I correct, Teresa, that you might be able to help Debbie out?
Sorry, can you repeat that? You want a certificate or something?
Yeah, like, so the nurses or the medical staff, they get CEs, but the non-medical staff, if we could get like a certificate of completion.
Yeah, certificate of attendance. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was, that information is in the registration along with the CE information. So if you'll, there is a track for basically, there's like kind of two tracks. There's a nursing track, and you're going to email me with your information and I will email you back with everything that you need. Or there is everything but nursing. And if that's the case, then you'll follow that other track and you'll get everything that you need through that link and that code. So all of that information is in the MRC calendar. So when you first registered, that should have been part of the instructions that you got. So just, if it's with anything else, just follow those instructions. If it's for nursing credit, then you're going to email me and I'll get back with you with the information.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, if anybody has any last questions, If
Just,
not,
I had just one final thought. I did want to, this is Charlotte Burton in Oklahoma City. I do ditto everybody's comments on what a positive experience volunteering has been in the midst of the pandemic, and this opportunity to learn more is fantastic. One of the things that I have seen is that as I've been working in some of the pods that have served more of our minority communities, specifically one that was more geared to the Latinos, and another that was more of an outreach into the Black community, and of course, also dealing with our elderly. Each of those more minority communities have, they've all been so appreciative. And I think this has been a way of also really building bridges in our society where we've got so much division, but I feel like it's been a really positive outreach. But I'm wondering if in future, like these 1 hour sessions, if there may be some things that would help educate us more on needs, maybe cultural things that would help us be more aware of as we're dealing with various minority communities.
I'm writing that down. Okay, good idea.
It reminds me, I had several folks ask during one of those big pods, why is the military here? Why do they have to be here? Because in their countries, the military is not necessarily a good thing. So they were very alarmed and concerned about that. And so I explained to them why we need volunteers and how they're helping, and the whole need to have an additional workforce to help supplement all of this. I said, we have so many people here that are just volunteering from the community. They're like, you're not getting paid. You're just, wow, like, thank you so much. And oh, it's so nice to know that the military is helping with this too. And their outlook completely changed. I didn't think about that beforehand.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
So,
you.
shall we
Thank
end
you.
for today?
Thank you, and hopefully we will see you next Friday from 10 to 12 and for part 3 of this series. And so have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.